Meera Sharma was just 23 when she left Mumbai for Los Angeles, chasing a dream of success. Richard Blackwell was 52, a wealthy tech investor hiding a sinister secret. Their paths should never have crossed, but when they did, it led to a relationship built on control, fear, and obsession. And it ended in murder. In 2022-23, old Meera Sharma landed at Los Angeles International Airport with stars in her eyes and nerves in her stomach. Born and raised in Mumbai, she had always been the brilliant daughter of a middle-class family, known for her intelligence and ambition. After years of hard work, sleepless nights, and intense preparation, she had secured admission to a top California university with a partial scholarship in computer science. It was the kind of opportunity most people in her neighborhood could only dream of. Her parents had taken out a loan to help cover what the scholarship didn't, and Meera promised them that this investment would one day return tenfold. Los Angeles was everything Meera imagined: fast-paced, glamorous, and full of ambition. But it was also brutally expensive. She shared a small apartment near Koreatown with 2 other students. Her days were filled with lectures and lab sessions, and her nights were spent working shifts at a local bookstore to scrape together rent and groceries. Despite her best efforts, the financial pressure only grew. Every time she sent a few $100s back home, her own bills fell behind. The guilt of letting her parents down, of not being able to keep up with her peers, began to gnaw at her. By the second semester, her situation had become unsustainable. She was missing meals, skipping social events, and even considered dropping a few classes to take on a second job, but that would risk her visa status. One evening, while scrolling through Reddit forums where international students shared survival tips, she came across a thread discussing sugar dating. Curious and desperate, she clicked. The stories were mixed. Some girls spoke of horror, others of luxury and ease. But all of them mentioned one thing: fast money. It wasn't a decision she made lightly. For days, she hesitated. She researched, read, and even created a burner email account. She didn't want to become that kind of girl. But hunger and unpaid tuition notices left her with little room for morality. In a moment of quiet panic, she signed up on a sugar dating platform under the alias Maya. Her profile was simple: a college student looking for a mutually beneficial arrangement. She posted carefully chosen photos, tasteful, nothing revealing. Within hours, the messages began flooding in. Most of them were crude or suspicious, but one stood out. A user named Mr. Blackwell sent a concise, polite message offering $3,000 a week for exclusive companionship. No drama, no strings, discretion required. Meera hesitated but eventually replied. His tone was professional. He didn't ask for photos or push boundaries. Their first meeting was at an upscale restaurant in Beverly Hills. He was much older, well-dressed, and surprisingly quiet. He handed her an envelope at the end of dinner. It had $1,500 in it just for showing up. Walking home that night, Meera felt a mix of relief and fear. The money was real. She could finally breathe, but something about Mr. Blackwell, his eyes, his control, his silence, made her uneasy. Still, she told herself this was temporary, just until she caught up on her bills, just until things got better. What she didn't know was that she had just opened the door to something far darker than debt. After that first dinner with Mr. Blackwell, Meera tried to convince herself it was a one-time thing. But when she opened her banking app and saw her overdue tuition bill, the reality sank in. The envelope of cash he had handed her was already half spent on rent and groceries. With trembling hands, she messaged him the next day. His reply came swiftly, same time, different place. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became routine, always in public places, luxury restaurants, rooftop bars, private lounges. Mr. Blackwell was always sharply dressed, polite, and precise. He never gave her his real name, only referred to himself as B. He claimed he was a private investor, divorced, and based in Beverly Hills. Meera didn't push for more. Every time they met, he handed her a thick envelope, and she tucked it away like it was poisoned fruit. It solved her problems, but it came with a price that was invisible at first. He began to draw boundaries: no social media posts, no showing his face to anyone. If she needed to contact him, it had to be through an encrypted messaging app he installed on her phone himself. He said it was for privacy, that his business depended on it. Meera nodded along, not wanting to risk losing the arrangement. He started sending her outfits to wear during their meetings, designer dresses in her size, along with notes specifying the time and location. She found it strange but rationalized it as part of the lifestyle. Over time, the dynamic shifted. At first, Meera felt in control. She told herself she was just playing a role, that she was using the situation to her advantage. But soon, B's presence began bleeding into parts of her life that had nothing to do with their arrangement. He once mentioned her roommate Tanya by name, although Meera had never talked about her. Another time, he casually commented on a dress she had worn to class, a day they hadn't met at all. It was then she started to realize he knew far more than he should. She grew suspicious and began checking her devices. She found a strange app running in the background on her phone, hidden behind a settings update. She uninstalled it and told herself it was probably nothing, but her anxiety only grew. B began to get possessive. He questioned her absences, asked who she spent time with, and even suggested she stop talking to certain friends. He offered to pay her more if she dropped out of school for a semester to spend more time with him. Meera refused. That week, he canceled 2 meetings without explanation. The third time they met afterward, he was cold, distant. When she asked if something was wrong, he smiled and told her she should be careful who she trusted. Meera started keeping a journal, a place to document the strange things she noticed. She wrote about the mysterious car parked near her building, the missing socks from her drawer, the time her laptop screen turned on in the middle of the night while she was asleep. Each entry ended with the same sentence: "I feel like I'm being watched." She was right. January 9th, 2023 was an ordinary Monday on campus. The spring semester had just begun, and students were returning with new energy and fresh goals. Meera Sharma, however, was nowhere to be seen. Her professors marked her absent. Her roommate Tanya assumed she was probably out with friends or maybe had gone home for a break. But when the second day passed with no sign of Meera, Tanya started to worry. She called her, but the phone went straight to voicemail. Texts remained unread. By the third day, Tanya entered Meera's room and felt a chill. The bed was perfectly made, the laptop gone, and the closet door slightly ajar. Meera's handbag was missing, but her makeup and some clothes were still there. Her charger was plugged into the wall, and her favorite sweatshirt was folded on the chair. None of it made sense. Tanya contacted the university office, and they filed a missing persons report with the LAPD. At first, the police treated it as a standard case. A college student going off the radar wasn't rare in a city like Los Angeles. But everything changed when a janitor discovered something alarming. Behind the apartment building, near the dumpster, a maintenance worker found a scarf tangled in garbage. It was stained with something dark, almost dried. He turned it in, and forensics later confirmed it was blood. DNA matched Meera's. The case immediately escalated. Detectives began combing through surveillance footage in the area. A gas station camera 2 blocks from Meera's building revealed a critical clue. At around 11:45 p.m., on January 7th, just 2 nights before Meera was reported missing, she was seen getting into a black car. The image was blurry, but the vehicle appeared to be a high-end Mercedes sedan. Her body language looked tense. She hesitated before opening the door and glancing over her shoulder, as if unsure. That was the last known sighting of her. Police dug deeper into her digital life. Her main social media accounts offered nothing unusual, just scenic posts and filtered photos. But Tanya remembered that Meera had been oddly secretive with her phone and once mentioned someone called B. That name meant nothing until investigators retrieved records from her phone company. A trail of encrypted messages led them to an unknown app that had since been wiped clean. However, some backup logs remained, and with technical support, they uncovered fragments of messages. One stood out: "Meet me, no excuses, you know what happens if you lie." Meanwhile, Meera's disappearance gained traction online. Hashtags like #FindMeera and #Justice for Meera circulated rapidly. Students, activists, and influencers held rallies. Her family, devastated and desperate, arrived from India to assist with the investigation. The story made headlines in both countries, search efforts intensified, local volunteers combed through parks and empty lots, drones were deployed over remote areas, but it wasn't until mid-February that a chilling discovery was made. A hiker walking along a rugged trail in Angeles National Forest noticed a half-buried suitcase beneath a pile of leaves and branches. The smell was unmistakable. Authorities were called in. Inside the suitcase were scorched pieces of clothing, a broken phone, and human remains wrapped in a tarp. Dental records confirmed what everyone feared. Meera Sharma had been found, but her nightmare wasn't over. The true horror was just beginning to unfold. The forensics team moved slowly through the contents of the suitcase, cataloging every scrap as if each fragment could still speak. Burn marks on the clothing suggested an attempt to destroy evidence, but the fire had been weak and rushed. The tarp carried soil from 2 different locations, meaning the body had likely been moved before being hidden in the forest. Among the remains, investigators found a crumpled, half-burned notebook page. The handwriting was Meera's. Only 2 words were still legible, not safe. It was the first concrete hint that she had seen her end coming. Detectives widened the digital search and focused on the hidden apps and backups in Meera's devices. A second, secret email surfaced, one she used only for encrypted communication. It showed regular contact with a person who signed off with a single letter. Buried under metadata, investigators found IP addresses that led to an exclusive Beverly Hills neighborhood, to a mansion registered under a shell company. The owner behind the company was Richard Blackwell, a 52-year-old tech investor known for his quiet philanthropy and clean public image. The name matched the initial B. A search warrant opened the doors to a world Meera had never fully seen. Inside the mansion, the police found a home office lined with servers and hard drives labeled with numbers instead of names. In a locked storage room, there were boxes of women's jewelry, prepaid phones, and printed copies of driver's licenses belonging to women who had never reported any crime. On one desk, a printed calendar was marked with initials and payment amounts. Meera's alias, Maya, appeared on the list for several months. Hidden cameras captured by the tech team showed that several rooms in the mansion doubled as surveillance hubs, each screen monitoring locations around Los Angeles. DNA analysis came back fast. The scarf from the dumpster had Blackwell's skin cells on it. A trace of his cologne was found on Meera's suitcase lining. His car, a black Mercedes S-Class, had been professionally detailed the week after Meera vanished, but ultraviolet light found faint blood traces under the passenger seat rails. A purchase record from a hardware store showed he had bought tarps, gloves, and a portable incinerator 2 days after the last gas station footage of Meera. Financial records revealed regular cash withdrawals timed exactly with Meera's recorded meetings. The prosecutors built the timeline piece by piece. Meera tried to pull away weeks before her death. She had inquired about restraining orders using her university computer and contacted a legal clinic anonymously. Logs showed that her message never reached the attorney. A remote access program had intercepted her email draft and deleted it before it was sent. The spyware recovered from her phone linked directly to Blackwell's servers. He had watched her every step. When police arrested Blackwell, he was calm, cooperative, almost indifferent. His silence only fueled speculation. Detectives suspected there were more women like Meera, women who had been isolated and controlled without leaving enough of a trail. Old case files of missing students and undocumented workers were quietly reopened. The mansion's drives were mirrored and sent for exhaustive analysis. Investigators believed the page Meera left behind was not just a warning, but a breadcrumb she hoped someone would follow. In the end, the secrets she hid in fear became the keys that unlocked the truth. The courtroom was packed on the first day of Richard Blackwell's trial. Journalists, students, activists, and members of the Indian community filled the gallery. waiting to witness the fall of the man now accused of the cold and calculated murder of Meera Sharma. The prosecution presented a carefully constructed case, one that exposed not just a single crime, but a pattern of manipulation, control, and psychological domination. Blackwell's defense team tried to paint Meera as a willing participant in a mutually beneficial relationship. But the evidence told a much darker story. The jury was shown photos of the surveillance setup in Blackwell's home, the spyware planted on Meera's phone, and the logs that detailed her daily movements. An expert testified how her texts and emails had been intercepted in real time, how her phone's microphone had been remotely accessed, allowing Blackwell to listen to her private conversations without her knowledge. The prosecution argued that when Meera began to pull away from him, when she started asserting her independence and making plans for legal action, he saw it as a threat, not just to his control, but to his entire secret life. Witnesses were brought in, students who had known Meera casually, her professors who spoke of her intelligence and dedication, and her roommate Tanya, who detailed the days leading up to her disappearance. Tanya recalled how Meera had grown anxious, had become quieter, and once even mentioned she might be in trouble. That statement, brushed off at the time, now hung in the air like a prophecy. What shocked the court most wasn't just the murder, but the extent of the obsession. Forensic experts recovered hundreds of hours of audio recordings of Meera taken without her knowledge, from study sessions to private phone calls to conversations with her parents in Hindi. Nothing had been private. Each interaction had been catalogued, named, and saved. The jurors looked visibly disturbed as this information was presented. Richard Blackwell remained emotionless throughout the trial. He never once looked at Meera's grieving parents, who sat quietly in the front row. Her mother kept a photograph of Meera in her hands the entire time, holding it like a piece of her daughter still remained. When the guilty verdict was read, first-degree murder, unlawful imprisonment, stalking, and obstruction of justice, there was no outburst, no cry of relief. Just silence, a long, painful silence that marked the end of a devastating chapter. Blackwell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but for Meera's family, no sentence could undo what was taken from them. They returned to India weeks later, carrying her ashes, her certificates, and the broken dreams she had once carried across the ocean. Meera's story became a national conversation, both in India and the U.S. Universities strengthened their support systems for international students. Awareness campaigns warned against digital manipulation in relationships. Scholarships were set up in her name. But even with all the efforts, one question still lingered in every headline and news segment. How many more had suffered in silence like Meera, and how many would never be found?